First Contact's Price. The Nexari research vessel Thought Seeker hung in high orbit above Europa, its crystalline hull refracting Jupiter's light into prismatic patterns across the icy moon's surface. Chief researcher Valera adjusted her sensory filaments, studying the readouts from the human mining facility 2 kilometers beneath the ice. Her species had spent centuries perfecting the art of psychic domination, yet these humans, these primitive, short-lived beings, somehow resisted their influence. Another failure, honored one, reported her assistant, Hemel. The younger Nexari's bioluminescent patches pulsed with frustration. Subject 47 has completely rejected the control matrix, just like all the others. Valera drifted closer to the observation window, her translucent form rippling with thought. Below, 300 human miners went about their daily work, extracting rare minerals from Europa's subsurface ocean, blissfully unaware they were being studied, or so she had thought. "Show me the neural patterns again," she commanded. The holographic display materialized, showing the chaotic, almost random firing of human synapses. Unlike every other sentient species that the Nexari had encountered, human brains seemed to operate in a state of controlled chaos. Millions of competing thoughts and impulses somehow coalescing into coherent action. "There's something we're missing," Valera mused. "No species should be able to resist." The ship's warning systems suddenly flared to life. Keenal's tentacles writhed in alarm as he checked the sensors. Multiple objects approaching at high velocity. They were hidden in the ice. Valera spun toward the display, her usual calm shattered. Hidden beneath the ice sheets, a dozen human vessels had broken free and were now rising toward them, trailing clouds of frozen vapor. The humans hadn't been unaware at all. They'd been waiting. The first impact rocked the Thought Seeker. These weren't mining vessels. They were weaponized icebreakers, their reinforced hulls specifically designed to operate in Europa's harsh conditions. The humans had turned their industrial equipment into weapons of war. "Impossible," Kimmel whispered. "Our scans showed no military technology. Their minds revealed no hostile intent." Valera watched in horrified fascination as her ship's psychic defenses, impenetrable against any known species, proved useless against the human assault. Because they've learned to hide their thoughts, she realized. Not through technology or training, but through the natural chaos of their minds. They think of so many things at once that we can't distinguish their true intentions from background noise. The human ships moved with precise coordination, herding the Thought Seeker away from Europa's orbit. A transmission cut through their communications. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Europa Defense Force. We've known about your experiments for months. Consider this a warning. Humanity is not your test subject. We are not your prey. Leave our space, or we'll demonstrate just how creative we can be with mining equipment." Valera felt a new sensation, something she'd never experienced in centuries of studying lesser species. Fear, not of the humans' weapons or technology, but of their minds. In all the Nexari's history of conquest, they'd never encountered a species that could not only resist their control, but turn that resistance into a weapon. "Full retreat," she ordered, her voice trembling. "Inform the High Council. The humans are to be classified as Omega-level threats. No further contact without full military escort." As the Thought Seeker fled into deep space, Valera recorded her final observations. Humans appear to possess a unique form of mental evolution. Their consciousness exists in a state of perpetual adaptation, making them immune to our standard methods of control. More critically, they have demonstrated the ability to weaponize this trait, concealing their true capabilities behind a shield of cognitive chaos. Recommendation: avoid all further contact with human territories. They are not merely resistant to our powers. They represent a fundamental threat to our way of life. The humans don't need psychic abilities to be dangerous. Their minds are weapons in themselves. In the Europa mining facility, Commander Chen watched the alien ship disappear from their sensors. She allowed herself a small smile as she sent a message to Earth Command. "First contact protocol successful. They took the bait. As expected, they underestimated us. Not because of our technology, but because they couldn't conceive of a species that evolved to be mentally unpredictable. Recommend proceeding with Phase 2. Let them spread the word. Sometimes, the best defense is convincing your enemies that you're more dangerous than you appear. The hidden gift. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stared at the neural scan results flooding her holographic display at the Lunar Neuroscience Institute. 6 months had passed since the Europa incident, and she still couldn't quite believe what she was seeing. Scattered across her lab were comparative brain scans from 100 different human subjects, each showing the same peculiar pattern, or rather, the deliberate lack of one. "It's not just resistance," she muttered, manipulating the 3D model of human neural activity. "Our brains actually evolved to be unpredictable." Her colleague, Dr. James Chen, brother of the now famous Commander Chen, looked up from his own workstation. "The Nexeri never stood a chance," he said, allowing himself a small grin. "They spent millennia developing psychic abilities that depend on predictable neural patterns. Meanwhile, human evolution took the opposite path." Elena nodded, highlighting specific regions of the brain scans. Environmental adaptation at its finest. While other species evolved toward stability and predictability, our ancestors faced such rapidly changing conditions that cognitive flexibility became our greatest advantage. We don't just think outside the box. We constantly rebuild the box. The lab's security door hissed open, admitting Admiral Helena Walsh of the newly formed Sinological Defense Command. Her uniform bore the fresh insignia of humanity's unified space defense force, created in response to the Nexeri encounter. "Please tell me you have good news, doctors," Walsh said, her weathered face serious. "Our intelligence suggests the Nexeri aren't taking their failure lightly." Elena brought up a new set of simulations. "Better than good news, Admiral. We've confirmed that our neural resistance isn't just passive. The more the Nexeri tried to impose their psychic control patterns during the Europa incident, the more our brains actively adapted to counter them. It's like an evolutionary immune system for our consciousness." In simple terms, James added, "they can't just develop a stronger psychic attack. Any attempt to overcome our resistance actually makes us more resistant. It's a losing game for them." Walsh's expression remained grim. "They'll try anyway. The Nexeri have built their entire empire on psychic dominance. If word spreads that humans are immune," she let the thought hang, "they'll have to act." Elena finished. "Either find a way to control us, or eliminate us as a threat to their power structure." She paused, bringing up one final simulation. "But that's not the most interesting part of our findings." The hologram shifted, showing neural pattern comparisons between humans and other Earth species. "Our unique brain structure, it's transferable. Early tests show that prolonged exposure to human neural patterns can actually induce similar resistance in other species. We're not just immune, we're contagious." Admiral Walsh's eyes widened as she grasped the implications. "You're saying we could potentially free other species from Nexeri control?" "Theoretically," James cautioned. "We'd need willing subjects and time to develop the process. But yes, human cognitive patterns could act as a template for other species to develop their own resistance." A priority alert flashed across the lab's main screen. Walsh accessed the message, her face hardening. "Well, we might get those test subjects sooner than expected. Long-range sensors have detected a Nexeri fleet approaching the Kuiper Belt. This time, they're not being subtle." Elena shared a look with James. "They must have reached the same conclusions we did. They can't risk letting us make contact with their subjugated species." "How long do we have?" James asked. 3 weeks at their current speed," Walsh replied. "I need options, doctors. Weapons, defenses, anything you can give us." Elena turned back to her neural scans, mind racing with possibilities. "What if we don't fight them conventionally? Their entire society is built on psychic control. They've never had to face a species that can resist them, let alone one that could free their servants. Maybe we don't need to outgun them. We just need to outlast them. James finished, already pulling up new simulations. Make any victory so costly, so dangerous to their entire power structure, that they have to back down. Walsh studied the neural patterns still floating in the lab's holographic display. You're suggesting we weaponize our immunity. Turn their greatest strength into a liability. Better, Alina said, her fingers flying over the controls. We show them that trying to control humanity is like trying to grab smoke. The harder they squeeze, the more we slip through their fingers, and the more dangerous we become to everything they've built. The Admiral was silent for a long moment, watching the chaotic, beautiful patterns of human neural activity dance through the air. Finally, she nodded. Do it. You have 3 weeks to turn humanity's gift into humanity's shield. Let's show the Nexeri why some species are better left alone. As Walsh left the lab, Alina turned to her brother. Think we can do it. James was already deep in calculations. They spent centuries perfecting their psychic abilities. We spent millennia adapting, changing, surviving against all odds. Evolution versus engineering. He looked up with a fierce grin. My money's on evolution. Breaking point. The Nexeri fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kuiper Belt, their crystalline ships forming a lattice pattern that rippled with psychic energy. High Admiral Seevor watched Earth's distant sun with his primary sensory cluster, his consciousness extended through the fleet's psychic network. 5,000 ships, the largest invasion force ever assembled in the Empire's history, all to deal with one primitive species that dared to resist. All vessels report ready, his second-in-command transmitted through the network. The humans have made no attempt to hide their defensive positions. Their arrogance will be their undoing. Seevor wasn't so certain. The humans' apparent confidence troubled him. Their fleet, a mere fraction of the Nexeri force, had taken up defensive positions around their outer colonies without attempting to conceal their numbers or capabilities. Either they were foolish beyond measure, or begin the attack, he commanded, pushing his doubts aside. Standard subjugation protocol. Overwhelm their minds first, then disable their ships. The psychic assault launched, a wave of mental energy that had brought countless species to their knees. Seevor watched through the fleet's sensors as it washed over the human ships, expecting to see their crews collapse, their vessels drift helpless in space. Instead, the humans accelerated toward them. Impossible, his second breathed. They should be incapacitated. The human fleet split into smaller groups, each moving with precise coordination. Seevor realized too late that they weren't simply resisting the psychic attack. They were using the Nexeri's own energy against them, following the waves back to their source like a beacon. They're targeting our psychic amplifiers, Seevor realized. All ships switched to conventional weapons. But the humans had anticipated this. As the Nexeri fleet's psychic network faltered, a new type of attack began. Small, automated drones launched from the human ships, each broadcasting what appeared to be random neural patterns, chaotic, unpredictable, maddening to Nexeri sensory organs. Mental feedback weapons, Seevor's science officer reported, her consciousness wavering. They're not just immune to our control. They've weaponized their cognitive patterns. The drones slipped through the Nexeri formation, their broadcasts creating zones of confusion and discord. Ships began firing on each other as their crews struggled to distinguish friend from foe through the psychic static. The carefully maintained network that made the Nexeri fleet so formidable was becoming their greatest weakness. Fall back, Seevor ordered. Regroup at. A new signal cut through their communications, broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice was human, calm and clear. This is Admiral Helena Walsh of Earth Defense Command. Your psychic attacks cannot harm us. Your technology cannot control us. But we are not your enemy, unless you force us to be. The transmission shifted, showing images that made Seevor's consciousness recoil. Research data from Earth's laboratories demonstrated how human neural patterns could be used to free other species from psychic control, not through force or technology, but through simple exposure and adaptation. You built an empire on control, Walsh continued. We built our civilization on chaos, adaptation, and freedom of thought. You can retreat now, leave our space, and maintain your empire. Or you can continue this attack, and we will have no choice but to share our gift with every species under your control. The choice is yours. Seevor watched as more of his ships fell into disarray, their crews overwhelmed by the humans' mental static. The humans weren't trying to destroy them. They were demonstrating that they could dismantle the entire foundation of Nexari power without firing a shot. Your species is an aberration, he transmitted back. A threat to the natural order. No, Walsh replied. We're the result of evolution taking a different path. You spent millennia perfecting your ability to impose order. We spent that time learning to thrive in chaos. You can't defeat us because the very concept of defeat means something different to humans. We don't submit. We adapt. We evolve. And right now, we're offering you the chance to evolve too. Seevor watched another squadron of his ships retreat, their crews unable to maintain coherent thought under the assault of human neural patterns. The humans had turned their greatest weakness, their unpredictable, chaotic minds, into an unstoppable weapon. All ships, he finally transmitted, his voice heavy with resignation. Withdraw to safe distance. Open diplomatic channels. He turned his sensory cluster toward Earth one last time. Perhaps it is time for the Empire to evolve. The tables turn. The Grand Assembly Hall of the Nexari Empire had never seen anything quite like this. Instead of the usual crystalline perfection and psychic harmony, the space thrummed with uncertainty. Representatives from a dozen subjugated species sat alongside their former Nexari masters, their minds noticeably less synchronized than before. At the center of it all stood Dr. Elena Rodriguez, addressing the assembly with a confidence that made many Nexari distinctly uncomfortable. The process is entirely voluntary, she explained, her words translated through both conventional and psychic means. Extended exposure to human neural patterns doesn't destroy psychic abilities. It simply grants immunity to unwanted influence. Think of it as a mental vaccination rather than a weapon. Supreme Coordinator Vikar, the highest authority in the Nexari Empire, shifted uneasily on his crystalline days. You offer to undo millennia of unified consciousness. Our empire was built on the harmony of shared thought. No, Elena corrected gently. Your empire was built on forced harmony. We're offering the choice between genuine unity and individual freedom. The results might surprise you. As if to prove her point, a Silari delegate, one of the first species to voluntarily undergo the human neural exposure program, rose to speak. The insectoid being's compound eyes reflected the hall's crystalline light as it addressed the assembly. For 10,000 cycles, my people served as extensions of Nexari will, the Silari's translator conveyed. We thought this was harmony. But in just 3 months of neural independence, we've made more technological and cultural advances than in the previous century. Diversity of thought breeds innovation. The chaos of individual minds creates possibilities that perfect unity never could. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Other species representatives began sharing similar experiences, artistic renaissances, scientific breakthroughs, cultural flowerings that had begun the moment their minds were truly their own. Admiral Walsh, standing beside Elena, stepped forward. Humanity never sought to destroy the Nexari Empire. We simply proved that genuine cooperation is stronger than forced compliance. Your psychic abilities don't have to be tools of control. They could be bridges of understanding between truly independent minds. Vikar's sensory filaments wavered as he processed this. And what guarantee do we have that humans won't use this mental contagion to establish their own empire? Elena smiled. Because that would go against everything that makes us human. Our strength comes from our diversity, our adaptability, our beautiful chaos. We don't want to rule. We want to explore, to learn, to grow. And we've learned that the best way to do that is to ensure everyone else has the same freedom. From the back of the assembly, A young Nexari scientist emerged. Lara, the researcher who had first discovered humanity's unique traits. Supreme Coordinator, I have spent the past 6 months studying human neural patterns. Their gift of resistance isn't just about defending against control. It's about embracing the full potential of consciousness. They don't achieve greatness despite their chaotic minds. They achieve it because of them. She projected her findings for all to see. The beautiful, intricate patterns of human thought alongside the emerging complexity of newly freed species. Look at what's already happening. The Solari have developed new forms of architecture that combine their hive mind heritage with individual expression. The Zorans have created art that bridges the gap between unified and personal consciousness. We're not losing control. We're gaining possibilities. Vikar was silent for a long moment, his crystalline form refracting light in complex patterns. Finally, he turned to Admiral Walsh. And what role do humans see for themselves in this new arrangement? Walsh's response was immediate. Teachers at first, then partners. Every species has something unique to offer. The Nexari's ability to share consciousness could revolutionize human understanding of the mind. The Solari's collective problem-solving could help us tackle challenges we've struggled with for centuries. But it has to be voluntary, mutual, and free. Elena stepped forward again, her expression earnest. The galaxy doesn't need another empire. It needs a community, one where every species can contribute their unique perspectives while maintaining their independence. The chaos of freedom is messy, challenging, and sometimes frightening. But it's also the source of everything that makes life worth living. Vikar's sensory filaments rippled in what might have been amusement. You humans do have a way of turning weaknesses into strengths. Perhaps it is time for the Nexari to learn this art as well. A new dawn. 1 year after the Grand Assembly, Earth hosted the first Galactic Cooperative Summit. The location itself was symbolic. No longer were humans isolated primitives to be studied or conquered, but essential partners in a new interstellar community. The Singapore Space Elevator's observation deck had been modified to accommodate delegates from 24 species, its transparent walls offering a stunning view of humanity's homeworld. Commander Sarah Chen, the hero of the Europa incident, stood at a viewport watching vessels from across the galaxy dock at the orbital station above. Nexari crystalline ships now moved peacefully alongside human craft, their designs already beginning to show signs of creative evolution. Less rigid, more adaptive, much like their creators' thinking. Quite a view, isn't it? Dr. Elena Rodriguez joined her, datapad in hand. The Solari just announced their latest breakthrough, a hybrid technology that combines their hive mind efficiency with human-inspired innovation. They're calling it controlled chaos engineering. Sarah smiled. Controlled chaos. That could be humanity's motto. She gestured to where a group of young Nexari scientists were engaged in animated discussion with human researchers. A year ago, they wouldn't even make eye contact with us. Now look at them. They're learning that there's strength in uncertainty. Elena replied, just as we're learning that there's value in their perspective. Did you see the new deep space sensing arrays? Nexari psychic technology combined with human intuitive processing. We're mapping regions of space we couldn't even detect before. The observation deck's doors slid open, admitting Admiral Walsh and Supreme Coordinator Vikar. The Nexari leader's crystalline form had changed over the past year, less symmetric, more organic, reflecting the evolution of his species' thinking. The final treaties are ready for signing, Walsh announced. The Galactic Cooperative becomes official today. Vikar's sensory filaments rippled with what humans had learned to recognize as enthusiasm. A new form of unity, he said, not imposed from above, but growing from below. My ancestors would never have believed it possible. That's the beauty of evolution, Elena observed. The only constant is change. The species that survive aren't the strongest or the most controlled. They're the ones most able to adapt. A soft chime announced the arrival of more delegates. A group of Solari entered, their compound eyes gleaming as they carried a large crystalline structure. Behind them came Zoran representatives, their ethereal forms shifting with excited energy. The Unity Sphere, Vakar explained, a gift from all member species, Nexari crystals for structure, Silari biotechnology for adaptation, Zoran energy patterns for harmony, and at its core. He gestured to Elena. Human neural patterns, she finished, not to control or influence, but to remind us all that strength comes from diversity. That chaos and order aren't opposites. They're partners in the dance of evolution. The sphere was installed in the center of the observation deck, its crystalline surface refracting sunlight into patterns that seemed to shift and flow like thought itself. Within its depths, energies pulsed in complex rhythms, ordered yet unpredictable, structured yet free. You know, Sarah mused, watching the play of light and energy. When I first encountered the Nexari of Europa, I never imagined we'd end up here. I thought we were facing the end of human independence. Instead, we helped bring independence to the galaxy. Because we didn't just resist control, Elena said. We showed there was another way. Humanity's gift wasn't just our mental resistance. It was our ability to embrace uncertainty, to find strength in diversity, to turn adaptation itself into an art form. Walsh nodded toward the earth below. For centuries, we looked to the stars and wondered if we'd find our place among them. Turns out, our place was showing other species that there is no single right way to exist. That true unity comes from celebrating our differences, not erasing them. Vakar extended his sensory filaments toward the Unity Sphere, his crystalline form resonating with its energies. The age of empires is over, he declared. The age of cooperation begins. Not perfect, not always smooth, but alive with possibilities. As if in response, the sphere's patterns shifted, incorporating the neural signatures of all present. Human unpredictability dancing with Nexari precision. Silari collective wisdom merging with Zoran energy patterns. It was chaos and order in perfect balance, a symbol of what was possible when species chose to learn from each other rather than dominate. Outside, the first rays of Earth's sun caught the orbital station, sending ribbons of light through the observation deck. A new day was dawning, not just for humanity, but for all species who had learned that the most powerful force in the universe wasn't control or technology, or even psychic ability. It was the simple, beautiful chaos of freedom, and the courage to embrace it.